Okay, everybody, welcome back to our interview series where I'll be talking with other healthcare professionals, going through their stories, how they got started, and of course, the people that they help. Today, my guest is Greg Hawe. He's a physiotherapist who graduated with a BSc in physiotherapy from the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, along with a previous BSc in health and performance science from the University College Dublin. He's an avid sportsman who played rugby, soccer, golf, and athletics growing up, and he's worked alongside rugby teams as well as physio and strength and conditioning coaches in Ireland before working in a public hospital in Singapore with rotations in MSK and Sports Medicine. And he's now working, of course, with UFIT. Greg, how are things going now? We're getting into phase two.
Yeah, great. Yeah, good to be getting back to some level of normality and being able to get patients into the clinic and help them with all of their problems. And obviously, good to be able to see some friends as well on the weekends now and do a little bit of socializing, I suppose. So yeah, all things considered, doing very well. Thanks for having me on as well. It's good to be here.
Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. So for those who've never seen a physiotherapist, how would you explain physiotherapy to them?
Yeah, so I had a good think about this one, I suppose. Physiotherapy is quite complex. Really, it's a form of rehabilitation or treatment. And I think mainly when people think of physiotherapy, they think of it to involve the musculoskeletal mainly. So when we think about the musculoskeletal system, we are restoring, maintaining, maximizing strength, function, movement, and overall well-being. But really, physiotherapy comprises a huge variety of disciplines and specialities, from MSK, like I just said, to respiratory, neurology, along with geriatric and medical physiotherapy. So there's such a broad range of knowledge that physiotherapists have, which I think is often unheralded, given that we all train in all of these areas before we most likely specialize into a specific stream. So at the moment, I'm working in MSK. So if we specifically talk about that, physiotherapists in MSK will study human movement, function, and pain. All of these areas can be interrelated and interlinked, and our expertise allows us to examine the relationship between them in great detail. There's a variety of different approaches to physiotherapy, maybe similar to chiro and I think it's your straight and your other types, if my chiro lingo is correct. But physiotherapy, we can have people that are manual heavy focused and use various adjunct treatments like dry needling and ultrasound and so on. And then we also have more exercise therapy based approaches, which is the category that I myself would fall into, where we're trying to educate people, get them moving, get them stronger, again, restore that range of motion if there's any limits there, and hopefully have positive impacts on pain and pathology in that sense. So in a nutshell, that's what I think it is. So hopefully that makes a bit of sense.
Interesting. I was actually talking with somebody yesterday. They called us because they had a groin injury. I mean, I told them, we're not the right kind of clinic for them. They said they've seen a physio, but it was more like you said, those adjuncts. And I asked, had they ever done any sort of exercise, any sort of things to really strengthen for tendonitis? And it's nice to see other people actually doing this stuff. I think it's going to be much more long lasting for those kind of cases.
Exactly. Yeah. I think some of the adjuncts, they definitely have their place. Maybe more short-term relief. And I think they're quite popular out in Asia as well with the traditional Chinese medicine and stuff. People would be used to getting the acupuncture and the massage and the deep tissue massage and stuff like that. So they definitely have their place. But again, in my own opinion, the exercise-based approaches, the education-based approach is going to give people a bit more ownership over their condition and help them more in the long term, really.
So let's start from the very beginning then. Why did you decide to become a physiotherapist?
Yeah, I suppose I kind of just fell into it, really. I suppose I didn't really know much about physiotherapy at all until I dislocated my knee when I was 19, I think, at the time. Hadn't really been injured too much before that. Playing a lot of rugby, it's quite a physical sport, but I was lucky to avoid injury for the early part of my rugby playing career, and then had a bad knee injury. So was kind of out of playing for the guts of 6 to 9 months, and did a lot of physiotherapy in that stage. And that kind of got me thinking, this is a pretty cool job. You get to be involved in sport all the time. And as a young kid growing up, that's pretty much all I was interested in, was just playing, watching sport. So to be able to combine that interest with a profession really appealed to me. Obviously, when I was going into physiotherapy, I didn't really understand that it involves the neurological side of things, the respiratory side of things. So that's often an area I think when people go into university for physiotherapy, they're not really aware of that. So, it's not always what meets the eye in terms of, being that pitch side person or being in a clinic. But my own injury history is probably what brought me into physiotherapy. And that's probably still the case. I just love to help people. I like to resonate with their injury and, bring them through the process. And really, there's nothing better than seeing somebody get back to what they love doing, whether that is at their day-to-day job, whether that's playing a round of golf, or whether that's, playing sport at an elite level, seeing that transitional process and getting people back to what they love doing. That's probably what drives me day to day.
Why did you decide to move to Singapore?
So I think if people aren't aware, there has not been a physiotherapy degree in Singapore for too long. So I think only in the past 1 or 2 years it's kind of become accredited. So a lot of people would have gone to Ireland to study physiotherapy. So that's where I'm from. And when I was in college, we had a talk from, I think it must have been the MOH or a hospital, asking physios to maybe consider coming and working in Singapore. So when I was in university, I kind of thought, that could be an option. So I filled out an application, then got an interview. I thought, what's harm in doing the interview? Did the interview, and then I got offered a job. So I was left with a choice. I could actually stay in Dublin in Ireland and stay within my comfort zone, or I could just take a leap of faith and go and explore and travel Asia and see what Singapore has to offer. So I went for the latter. Couldn't be happier with the decision really at this stage as well.
Okay, and then how did you land at UFIT? Because I understand you were working in hospitals before.
Yeah, exactly. So I worked in Changi General Hospital when I moved out here. And I did kind of my various rotations, like I said to you at the start there. So I conducted respiratory, ICU, MSK, worked in the sports clinic there along with geriatrics as well, and orthopedic inpatients. And then I just thought it was maybe a bit of a time to change. I kind of knew that my passion lay with sports side and the MSK stuff. So just wanted to maybe transition a little bit more to that, having done my rotations. And, UFIT offered me the perfect scenario really, with a combination of private practice and the potential to work in sport as well. A really supportive team there and a lot of like-minded people, especially with the personal trainers, the strength and conditioning coaches and the nutritionists, which are all other clinical areas of interest of mine. So it's been fantastic for my personal growth and being able to, share ideas with all the people that I work with. And then again, the clientele is the kind of client that I love to work with. They're very receptive, big on the education side, and they're all active in their management as well. So it's been a good move, and hopefully it will continue to be that way.
Can you tell us a bit more about the clientele you see and some of the conditions or the issues you commonly face in practice? Yeah,
so in private practice, you really see everything under the sun, I think, from foot and ankle pathologies to head and neck injuries and everything in between. I think one of the biggest challenges from working in private practice is that we're often the first point of contact for patients, probably like you guys and Kairos can be as well. So it really, really challenges your clinical reasoning, your clinical assessment skills, and you're almost acting like a GP, if that makes sense, because you're kind of looking to see, okay, well, what is going on with this person, and am I the most appropriate person to help them right now? And if so, what can I do? So I love that aspect of it, to really challenge your own clinical reasoning, like I said, and see what difference can you make to that patient. But sometimes you're going to have to refer on, whether that's say, look, I think you might need to see a GP, you might need an X-ray here. But to go back to the conditions, I suppose, back pain is very common, neck and shoulder pain, very, very common. And then probably at the moment, I think I've written a blog post about this, but on returning to training after the lockdown, I think people would have gone one or two ways. They're either going to have trained a lot when they were in lockdown, or they're going to have done very little. So you can have various overuse or undertraining injuries surrounding that. And this is an area that I love to treat, really with tendon issues and the problems that they pose. So tendon issues in the Achilles, patellar tendon issues, knee pain, all very common ones that come in, especially in runners and team sport athletes. And then probably my most commonly referred injury is ACL injuries. So lots and lots of knee-related injuries, ACL in particular, post-operative ACL. So yeah, in a nutshell, I think probably everything, but at the moment, I'd say a lot more knee-based.
Okay. And what about for yourself during the lockdown? Were you exercising a lot or exercising a little?
A lot. Yeah, a lot. I set myself a goal to run a half marathon, probably having run about 10K before. So I managed to increase from 10K to 21K in the space of about 5 weeks. And it was definitely pushing the limit. So probably not practicing what I preach to an extent there, but look, I can't blame people for wanting to exercise. But it's just about doing it in the right way, isn't it?
Absolutely. So going back to, of course, the job and moving to Singapore, what were some of the biggest challenges that you had?
Yeah, I suppose loads when I really moved out. Going into Changi Hospital was very, very eye-opening. I think the language and the cultural diversity was probably the biggest challenge at the time. I'd been to Asia maybe once before, probably about 4 years before I came out here, but it was a little bit of a backpacker holiday, so nothing to the same extent. But once you get into the ward settings in the hospitals, and you're seeing people from a variety of different ethnicities and backgrounds, and trying to pick up and learn different lingos, was probably the most challenging aspect at the start. Now, we were very lucky. We had therapy assistants that were amazing and fantastic that would help us with little translations, and we would have been lost without them. But the language barrier was definitely a very, very challenging aspect, along with just learning and being able to kind of empathize and resonate with people and their backgrounds and where they come from. It's very, very culturally different to Europe, where I think maybe a bit of a broad generalization, but sport plays such a huge role in the Western world. And it does here to an extent as well, but just maybe not on the broad scale. So trying to educate people around, the importance of exercise and the importance of nutrition in that aspect, I think was challenging as well, and an area for growth that we might come on to later in the interview. But I suppose not from a work perspective or a professional perspective. I came out here on my own, so meeting new friends and meeting new pals was always going to be a challenge as well. So joining a rugby team out here was the way that I connected with some new friends. I was lucky that I was able to live at home when I was in university. So, moving away to, I suppose, what's the time difference, or the travel time is 17 or 19 hours, so not just moving around the corner or down the road, moving 19 hours away was a challenge as well. And then finally, probably the heat as well, I think, was a big challenge. And I wouldn't even say that I'm used to it, the heat, yet. I'm more just used to kind of probably sweating in the heat and just don't notice it as much. I wouldn't say I've adapted too much to it. So yeah, there are probably loads of challenges there.
And what are some goals that you currently have, either for yourself, the practice, or for even the profession, say, within Singapore?
So I suppose personally, for myself, professionally, I want to be as busy as possible and see as many patients as I can. And that has twofold benefits, I suppose. From a business perspective, it's obviously good to be seeing lots of people, and the more you see, the more successful you're going to be. And then from a personal perspective, it means that I'm helping more people. So obviously, the more people I see, the more lives I can positively impact, the more people we can hopefully help. And again, I'm a big believer in learning through experience. So professionally, for me, I want to see as many conditions as I can, help as many people, because that's going to expose me to more problems and drive my own personal growth. At the moment, I think I'm very much kind of going year to year in terms of what my own goals are. At the moment, I'm very focused and just still settling into UFIT, having come through the pandemic, is still make the most of my time there and help the company and help the patients that I currently have. But in the long term, I would like to do a master's. I think there's a couple that I'm looking at. So when the time is right, I would love to do a master's in musculoskeletal or sports physiotherapy. And my final professional goal would be to work in elite sport at some level. Like you alluded to at the start, I do have experience working in probably more amateur level sport at home in Ireland, but working in elite sport would be definitely a goal that I would like to experience, even if it was just for the short term, but just to see that environment and see how athletes work on a day-to-day basis. Would be something I think I would really, really enjoy, and would be very, very stimulating, very, very challenging.
Okay. Is there any particular sport you'd want to work with more?
I think I'm probably biased towards rugby because that's the sport that I've always played and grown up doing. But soccer would be fantastic as well. And there's a few others. I mean, I'd love to be involved with golf too. Again, that's probably biased just because I love those sports. But I think if there was an opportunity arose in any sport, I don't think I'd turn it down, because I think the more sports that you could be involved in, again, the more professional connections you're going to get, and the more crossover you're probably going to see to different sports, and again, the more growth you're going to have on a personal level. So look, I think from an athlete perspective, people will always say the Olympics or a World Cup is the pinnacle. So if you could get into an Olympic sport, potentially being able to do that would obviously be fantastic as well. But there's obviously such a wide range of them there, so probably difficult to say which sport you might pick. But yeah, if an opportunity arose, I wouldn't turn one down. But I think team sports are probably, I wouldn't say they're easier to get into, but maybe a little bit easier to get your foot in the door. And I have experience in that area, so maybe a team sport would be somewhere where I would start.
Yeah, I know some friends before, not just chiropractors and physiotherapists as well, who've worked in sport, and it really has to be that passion. You have to really want to be there. If you're, playing with footballers and you're going to be there in pouring rain on the touchlines, you really need to love what you're doing. Absolutely.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Yeah.
And so, as far as I understand, you have quite a busy list here, and you're working with athletes. What do you think are some of the most important factors of success?
I think really what I try and drive with people is trying to educate them on whatever pathology or condition that they have. So giving people a good understanding of why they're requiring rehab is going to give them the tools to go and be successful with their rehab. Really pushing an active management of condition, giving ownership of that. We're very lucky that we have great access to fantastic facilities here in the UFIT clinic, and especially the way that we can distribute exercise programs. So I don't think we can really say that there's much excuses for failure or for not giving the patients the tools to do that. But educating them, giving them ownership, I think is the biggest tool to success in allowing people to remain injury free, avoid injury, and then recover from injuries and pathologies as well.
Out of curiosity, I played a little bit of rugby when I was in university, and I played in Indonesia, and then I came here and I saw the size of the Aussies and the Kiwis, and I decided not to play for a while. I didn't want to break my hands. How do you find the competition here compared to back home?
I was actually pleasantly surprised by the competition here. I think it is quite competitive. It's obviously maybe a little bit more social than certain levels as well, because a lot of people have come to Singapore, maybe traveling from abroad, and are similar to myself, where they're looking to make new friends and meet new people and settle into a club where they can play their serious rugby but also enjoy themselves off the pitch as well. But there's definitely some very, very strong players here, both people from abroad and then definitely locally as well. So we're starting to see a little bit of growth in the Singapore National League with some of the local teams in the Singapore national team, and they've got some great coaches on board. So hopefully we can see that growth continue. But the standard is good, and I think you need some of those big Kiwis and those big Aussies to drive those standards and help everyone improve as well. But I think the best thing about rugby, is it's a game for all. No matter what your size, structure, shape, there'll be a position for you on the team, which invariably doesn't come with a lot of sports. So yeah, that's what I think what makes rugby that little bit unique.
Yeah, so in an ideal world, of course, we talked about some goals that you have for yourself and for your practice. In an ideal world, what kind of changes would you want to see in healthcare systems, especially given that they have this pandemic and everything going on at the moment?
Yeah, I'm going to come back to education again, because I think changing the narrative around education is just being driven worldwide. And I think here in Singapore, it could probably be pushed on a little bit further. I think if we look to clinical research, clinical education, we're finding that it plays such a role, and that we can see improvements in pathologies purely just through education. And again, from my experience working in the private practice system here, along with the hospital, is sometimes people aren't educated and they're not sure why that they need an operation, or what role can rehab play, or, why should I see a chiro versus a physiotherapy? So just helping people make these simple decisions about what is best for them and what they need to do is invariably going to give them better patient satisfaction and better outcomes to whatever rehab pathway they choose. And we need to, involve them more in decision makings as well, and potentially not just encourage them down any one route. Us as practitioners, we're obviously going to be biased towards whatever our particular profession is, but I think we need to be as impartial as possible. Really look at that patient individually and think, well, what is the best thing for you? Assess all options, display them to them, educate them on what all their options are going to be, and choose that best avenue to help them, whether it's improve their performance, reduce their pain, get them back to work, maximize their function, whatever it might be. Like I said, going back to that education aspect of treatment, I think is really, really important. There's so many different treatment modalities, fancy strength exercises, fancy treatment adjuncts that we can use, but they all probably come back to the same thing or do the same thing ultimately, right? So having our patients understand why we're doing X, Y, and Z, and showing them what they can do themselves is going to be way more valuable. If they're coming to a physio clinic once a week, 1 hour a week, I can't even do the math off the top of my head of how many hours there are in a week, but 1 hour versus the complete remainder of the rest of the week, that's the most important part in my view. So what can I do in a session that's going to keep them over for the remainder of those 6 days and the 23 hours of this day, whether that's their nutrition, their sleep, their recovery, the exercises they're doing, the cardiovascular exercises that you might be getting that they're doing. All of those revolve and come back to education. So yeah, that I think is in Singapore and worldwide is just education. Educate people as much as we can.
I know you mentioned, of course, you're doing a lot of running yourself. Given the lockdown that we had before and the fact that, to be honest, some people are still going to be working from home, some of which may be working from home until the end of the year, what kind of tips or advice would you want to give these people who are probably spending more time, sitting at their desk or at their dinner table or something else instead?
Exactly, yeah. So, exercise is of any form. It's just about finding what you love to do. Exercise is going to be way more beneficial when you enjoy doing it. So if you don't enjoy running, don't go and run, because it's only going to make you more upset, or you might get even more injured from going and doing it. And there's so many different forms of exercise that you can do, but the benefits of exercise are unheralded, from all of your health markers, your cardiovascular health, your respiratory health, your immune system, bone mineral density, muscle mass, maintenance, along with helping regulate your sleep, your body clocks, driving your appetite, controlling your body composition, mental health. The list goes on. The benefits of exercise, there's so many to them that it's just about finding that form of exercise that you love and doing it as often as you can. Socializing as well, if you can mix it in, so meeting your friends for that form of exercise, getting your family involved. There's loads of different ways that we can encourage people to get out, especially outdoors. Again, we know the benefits of being in the sun exposure, especially in the mornings as well. So yeah, look, have a think about what exercises you like, what's the best way to implement them, whether that's going to the gym to get some guidance, whether that's, going to a friend who has some knowledge on that. Even if it's doing an online class, you've only got half an hour of a break from work, get up off the chair, set up your laptop. The one positive of the lockdown period is, that I wouldn't say there's a single person that doesn't know what Zoom is, or, so there's no excuses for not being able to jump on an online class or anything like that. But yeah, again, coming back to your question, spending more time at home, exercise as much as possible.
How about for yourself? I know, of course, you're going back to work now. Is there anything that you've been changing? I know I'm guessing you're not doing your running as much anymore. Would you carry that on though, or do you want to do something different for yourself?
Yeah, definitely. Running wasn't something that I would have done a lot of. I suppose long distance in playing rugby, we would do a lot of more high intensity, shorter distance running drills. I'm hoping to keep up my running. But again, going back to the gym, I do love training in the gym. So having access to some of the facilities again, the use of barbells and some heavier weights, easing myself back into that. So from a load perspective, a frequency and volume and kind of exercise progression, I think it's important not to bite off more than you can chew too early. Again, going back to that injury prevention standpoint. So myself, I'm kind of easing myself back into that. And again, just enjoying it. I think like I said above, it's important to enjoy what you're doing. So that's what I enjoy doing. I now know that I enjoy running more than I thought I did. So I'm going to try and keep that up as well. But again, lucky to be back in work and be able to train with my colleagues, socially distant training and all that. So it's, lucky at the moment to be able to do that.
Before we go today, if you could talk to yourself, say 5 years ago, and give yourself some advice, what kind of advice would you give?
Yeah, this is a fantastic question. So I've kind of gone for two different ones. I've got a personal one and a professional one. So we'll go with professional first. I think I have to connect with as many people as possible. I think when I was in college, I thought that maybe sometimes people would hoard information or not be open to sharing it because they thought that it might lead to other people's successes and they didn't want to be overtaken in certain categories. But now I think connect with as many people as you can in your own profession, outside of your own profession. So, doing these interviews, they're just fantastic. And, hopefully some people are going to take some value from this as well. But connect with as many people as you can because it's only going to be fruitful really for yourself. And you never know where the connection will lead. So yeah, just connect as much as you can. And probably read more would be the second one. I wasn't a big reader. When I was in school or in university even, I would have struggled to have sat down and read, even a physiotherapy related book or a journal or even just a leisure book. So reading more is definitely a habit that I've picked up and I think is very, very beneficial. It's a great way just to kind of let your mind relax and take your mind off. Again, whether it's work or life stressors, just to get into a good book. And then again, even from a professional level, there's so much great content out there that you can just, read. And the joys of having things like, Kindle or audio books or touch your phone, the amount of resources out there that you can do to push yourself professionally are just unbelievable, really. And then go into a personal level. I'm going to reuse one of them and say read more again, because that's just kind of been something that I've gotten really into in the past 2 years. And again, coming away from physiotherapy, there's loads of books that I just love to read. And I think it's amazing how much stuff you don't know about the world. So I've kind of gotten into like a geopolitical vibe, reading books like Prisoners of Geography and The World in Conflict. So I think it's important to, educate yourself about all the stuff that's going on in the world so that we're not narrow-minded. It's going to have great benefits for again, your personal growth in a personal and professional level. So read things, read different things, read random things. Again, like exercise, see what you like and just get stuck into it. And then again, the final one would just be kind of enjoy my training a little bit more. Like I said, give myself more flexibility. I was a sucker for having programs and sticking, to this program by the book for 6 weeks and, would get upset if I missed a session or missed a set or, didn't achieve that 5% increase in weight. But looking back, I'm kind of thinking, why was I so hard on myself or why was I trying to achieve that goal really? Whereas, now being able to lift a super maximal load isn't really as important to me. Just enjoying my training, being able to train with people when you can, give yourself that flexibility, enjoy it as much as you can and just go by feel. If you're tired, you feel a bit run down, you don't have to do a session just for the sake of it because it's written in a program, push it back the next day, do something a little bit lighter. So I think that's hopefully going to help my longevity and my mental health a little bit more going forward from a training perspective. So hopefully that's some interesting information about my advice to myself if I was to go back 5 years.
Yeah, so I think it's something that other people could certainly take some advantage from as well.
Hopefully, fingers crossed anyway.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Greg. Thank you for everybody who's watching this either live or watching on the replay. If you have any questions for Greg, I'll make sure that he's tagged in the description. If you have any other questions, you can always put them into the comments and we'll get back to you as fast as we can, or you can leave us a call at 8438-9550 or email help@vitalitychiropracticcentres.com. Thank you for joining me again today.
Thanks. All the best.